Hello everyone, welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with Anne Welsh. Today's guest is also a sickle cell warrior. I've been getting a lot of guests who are sickle cell warrior, which really pleases me that we're finally coming out and sharing our story. We're beating the stigma. You know, with sickle cell, there's so many stigma around it that it was forbidden to talk about it because people didn't really understand what sickle cell was. But finally, people are starting to do things about it, not just share the story. They started to form organizations. She started Sickle Cell Matter all the way in Atlanta, USA. I can't wait for you guys to meet her because she's amazing. She's doing something really, really fascinating. Meet my guest. Thank you, everyone, for joining us to Painless Universal, a conversation with me, Anne Welsh. As I briefly introduced you before, she's an inspiring young lady who is doing an amazing job for people, warriors like myself and herself as well. And I just want her to introduce herself, darling, because you're from Sickle Cell Matters. I don't know how you started it, how you get the energy to do things like that, but who are you?
So my name is Muslima Hassan. I live in the
I always have a problem pronouncing my name, and I always get nervous about saying it wrong. And I want everyone to know I have a problem with names, so I have to put this live to the world. I have a problem with names.
That's totally fine. Believe me, that's my whole life. My parents gave me a difficult name, so I'm used to it. But yeah, so I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, but my organization, Sickle Cell Matters, is I try to make my focus worldwide. So I focus mostly on just connecting the community, connecting each other, but then also connecting with other pages or nonprofits like yourself, or there's other nonprofits out there. I try to make sure I share information so that we can all kind of have a worldwide community to come together and share or express or invite to certain events and things like that. So I try to make it a worldwide community, if you can kind of look at it that way.
Oh, good. What gave you the desire and inspiration to go about and creating Sickle Cell Matters?
Yeah, sure. So I have sickle cell myself. So it's kind of one of those things where it was inspired through my personal journey. I would like to say my mom definitely inspired a lot of the spark for me to go out and want to help other people. My mother, when she found out I had sickle cell, was in the 80s, and it wasn't much information. So she started the first nonprofit group where we're from in Ohio, the first parent and family group. And I watched her fight tooth and nail with, hospitals and doctors and, the information. I remember her telling me she read a book at the time because she had to go to a library to find more about, what her children had. And in the book, it said that people with sickle cell should practice genocide. And when she read it, she was like, oh my God, what am I reading? And that was kind of one of the only things that she had, but it sparked that fight to say, no way, I'm going to change the way this works. So I grew up going to parent and family meetings with her. I saw her talk to doctors and nurses, and she really instilled into me that I have to know what's going on with me, because this is something not everybody is educated on. So you have to be the most educated. And I kind of took that and then ran with it and then wanted to inspire, educate others.
Wow. Because in my case, it was totally different. My mom didn't know much about sickle cell, but she didn't really go to these organizations to find out a little bit more. She just talked to friends and would deal with me in her own way, but never thought of joining an organization. It was me actually who had the initiative that I thought, because sometimes you just feel alone, isolated. You don't see people like, even when you're in hospital, for example. I remember being in hospital and I will never see a young person in hospital, especially when you do that transition and they'll put you with older people, and you're looking around, and even sometimes the doctor comes and they see you and they have this shock on their face, like, what is this young person doing here? Even the older people used to ask me, why are you in hospital? Why are you here? Leave us to do. We have lived our life. Why not you just let your body not be sick? And I couldn't explain to them. So I'm absolutely delighted that your mom had that initiative to start something that which you've now lived off it, and
Yeah.
now built on this successful sickle cell matter, which I'm going to keep calling because I think it's an amazing, it's an amazing organization. And if people out there really who don't know, what exactly is sickle cell matter
Yeah.
in terms of what is it? I know you have sickle cell, but what exactly is sickle cell matters?
Sorry, I had a call. I had a call come in, but yeah, no, exactly.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that don't understand why the term sickle cell matters even exist, and it's because sickle cell has been around for let's say it's been around in the healthcare field for about 100 years. I'm sure it's been around more than that, but when they actually discovered it healthcare wise, and it's one of the first genetic diseases ever discovered. However, we haven't made the strides that other genetic diseases have made. Other ones like
It's a
uh,
process.
exactly.
This is
So they have a lot of funding. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of things behind these genetic diseases, and we were literally the first. Like there's case studies built because of sickle cell disease, but they built those case studies to then go out and master or research or build better drugs for the tend to always the back end of things. So even with care, there's a lot of people that go to hospitals, depending on where you are, especially if you're not in a major city, it's highly likely that it'll be very difficult for you to receive correct care. And that's just a basic human right that everybody should have. So people with sickle cell, they go places and a lot of times you won't receive correct care because the hospital is uneducated on a disease that's been around for over 100 years.
mm, wow. So you guys started this organization to actually reach out to people and form. It's a global network then that
Exactly.
reaches out
Exactly.
and give out shout and organize one or two events, I presume.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we have done some events on our own.
Mm,
Um, I just wanted to make sure I formed a base first. So, a good following. Eventually, I'll start doing email registry so that I can start to target people in certain demographics. But I didn't want to do anything where I was asking for funding or anything until I knew I had a good base and then also a well put together event. I want to make sure that before I ask for donations or, for people to sponsor me, that it's an event that's truly every penny is going to something that's going to make a real impact.
yeah.
So, kind of just doing social media right now, just to kind of build up that foundation, that base. And then eventually I'll start to partner with people like yourself. We've talked about certain things, me and you,
Yes.
and doing something that really will affect change.
Yeah. No, I think this is what you needed right now in this world today. Is people like yourself reaching out, because there's just so many several issues around the world, and there's lack of care. That the standard of care in every country, every place is so different, and
Yes.
that's what we need to communicate, because the symptoms and everything is very much the same. But if the
Yeah.
standard of care is different, then it's not on. Yes. And your
And
sickle cell. Go on.
there's people with sickle cell that literally are scared to travel because
Yeah.
of that.
Yes.
So, I'm sure as there's people that me and you have kind of, we've probably got over that, but it's
Like,
still, I'm sure, in the back of your mind, where are you going, and do they potentially have a place that may be able to care for me if in the event I get sick. But there's some people that won't go anywhere, and I understand it. They won't go anywhere because they know that where they are, their health care, takes care of them, but they could venture out somewhere else. And I don't even mean travel around the world. They
Yeah.
could venture to another state,
Yeah.
and they don't know what the care is like. So there's a lot of people that won't travel because they don't know what they're too afraid to venture out and potentially run into a hospital that has no clue how
Mm.
to care for them.
Yeah, because it's happened to me once, and that was a valuable lesson for me because I remember I was traveling and I arrived in Nairobi, Kenya, and I
Uh-huh.
got sick. I fainted in the airport. I was doing a transit flight going to back to London,
Wow.
and I fainted at
Uh-huh.
the airport. And silly me or non-silly me, I told them, oh, I have sickle cell. Immediately I mentioned that word, they said to me, you're not allowed to get on that flight. And
Really?
I was there, when you wait in the waiting and everyone is about to board the flight. So they were boarding the flight. They didn't want to tell me directly. All of a sudden, I'm like, guys, I'm meant to be on this flight. I'm slightly better now. I just fainted because obviously sometimes we lack oxygen. We just need to sit down and get. They believe that there is no way I'll make it to London. I'll probably have to get the plane to emergency stop. But they didn't think of the consequences of living in a country that I was on transit on. I didn't have a hotel. I didn't have anything. And I was just
Wow.
my whole body just wanted to go home. They just left me.
Yeah.
No one asked me, okay, where are you going to stay? And I just felt like, wow,
So
wow.
scary.
And
Wow.
I had to call in that middle of the night. I think it was because the flight was very late. I had to call a hotel, see if they had a room. And they said, we're not going to let you on our BA flight again. Sorry, I had to.
Wow.
And they're not going to let you on the flight again because you have to go get a medical thing. And I respect their decision because it was fair. There were other people on the flight, and what we have is a genetic blood disorder, but it just really teaches you the airline industry has not understood our illness
That's
and
true. I've never heard
how
that.
it
That's good.
affects us. And I'm in the middle of this country. I don't even know where to go to the hospital to get a medical
Yeah.
note. Luckily, I had a girlfriend there, and I called her, said, look, I'm in this problem. Do you know any doctor? So she took me to the general hospital, and the guy did everything, did the check, did the blood test. And luckily the result came back that day, and he said, you're fine.
Wow.
I had to, and making it worse because I'm in another country and it's not that flight place. That's not their hub. I had to send everything back to London. London had to approve me before
Wow.
they would take me. So it was just complete. And imagine being sick, slightly sick and having to
Yeah.
as well. So then that's when I realized that because people don't know enough about that illness, they also discriminate indirectly against us. And it's through no fault of anyone, but this is what tends to happen on an ongoing basis. Yeah.
Exactly. And see, this is the reason why it's good for us to have a global community, because that's something I've never heard of.
Mm.
So now I'll know if I ever travel somewhere, I might be a little, maybe not mention sickle, like if I know how I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
handle it. But that's good to know because I never heard of that. I never knew anybody that experienced that. But I mean, that's good information. So a global community is important for us to have so we can share these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. For your experience with sickle cell, we're talking about how people overcome pain. Your experiences in your organization and your personal experience, how have you managed to, still have this organization, right? It's time consuming, it takes a lot of effort, and still find yourself and still find joy at the end of it because sickle cell is not easy. And I know you have a daughter as well. So how are you dealing with all of this?
That's a good question. It's definitely a trying event. So, meaning that I've had to log off and at times give myself
Mm.
some time to myself, because I'm sure, as you know, we get messages from around the world,
Yeah.
just where people don't know what to do. They're in rural areas where they don't even have medication to get to. They're asking questions, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't like to. I'll only give suggestions of what I've done, or maybe I'll pose a question to the community and have that person now read the comments to see, what maybe a collective group are saying. But I'm not a doctor, so I don't give out, information,
Yeah, the medical.
uh, medical information, correct. But you get messages where people need money for surgeries, and
Yeah.
uh, or people send me pictures of wounds, and it it can get very, very tough. So I've had to. I read a lot of psychology books, and I listen to a lot of self help and motivational speakers, and so I try to trust the flow, if you get what I mean. So if it starts to feel like there's a resistance, I have to back away, because I don't feel like you're giving them from a place of fullness, or like a full cup. If I'm trying to force something, then I'm not giving my best work. So I have to take times where I sit back, and I've done that before, where I logged off for 6 months, and I just was on my own personal page, and I was just doing the things that I needed to do to help me as a person with sickle cell.
Yeah.
Then when I felt revived, I got back to it. I got back on my page. I was able to answer messages and things like that. But I literally had to tell myself, when it doesn't feel like a flow, meaning like it feels good, it feels purposeful, I feel led. When it doesn't feel like it's flowing, and it feels like I'm trying to force it, or I'm doing something and it feels bad, or I'm hating it, or I'm drained, I tell myself stop, because it's not authentic work at that point. It's me forcing something that maybe, my belief in God is telling me, take a break, take a rest.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I think it's so important to understand yourself. Like, even today, for example, I just felt so tired, and I said to my son, if I go ahead with this conversation, which I've scheduled in for today, if I don't rest before ahead with it, I'll be slugging my speech. I won't know what I'm saying, because the brain will not be connected, because the lack of oxygen, the lack of rest, just keeping busy. So I think that taking time out is so important. It doesn't matter when, what time. You can't question yourself. If your body needs it, your body just has to get it.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of times we watch these things where people are saying team no sleep, and go hard as possible. And
Yeah.
things are tough, back away from things that are, not hard. But you have to be able to decipher, okay, what am I just fighting through? Because, I feel good fighting through, kind of like when you work out.
Mm.
Working out is tough, but you feel good afterwards.
Yes.
It's a difference though if you're trying to force now something. And because we have sickle cell, that is very dangerous for us to, do this, like, team no sleep, and go as hard as possible, and you only have 24 hours in a day, and that's
Yeah.
detrimental to us. It's actually better when you can take the time and rest and reset, and then give from a place that's full and revived and ready.
Mm. No, I really couldn't say more about that, because it's absolutely so true. The more you rest, the better. But how have you overcome your pain with if you have to go to hospital? How do you manage that and deal with the pain when you're there?
Um, well, because I uh I will say this, having a parent that taught me to ask questions, um, know what I'm getting, what they're giving me, what I need, what works. She really taught me to be in tune with what protocol worked for me. So because I know that, I'm able to go to most hospitals and pretty much tell them what to do.
Mm.
I'll get pushed back a lot of times, because some doctors or nurses don't like to feel like you are educating them, or maybe
Yeah.
more than them. But fortunately, because I do know what works and I know what I need, I'm able to go to. I've done some trial runs in my city, so there's some hospitals I won't go to, because I've had to experiences that they were just terrible. So I know from, trial and error what hospitals the best care for me means. They listen to me and they just kind of follow the protocol that I personally need.
So I wanted to touch base on something very different from sickle cell. With everything going on in the world, we've had to deal with coronavirus. You're out there in the
Yes.
States. There's the Black Lives Matter, which is something very
Yes.
big. And when I think of the
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter, I remember people with sickle cell, because people with
Mhm.
sickle cell, people don't realize that we've been discriminated all our lives.
Oh,
And
yeah.
tell people this, people always get confused. What are you saying? The treatment
Yeah.
we've got in hospital, people have always accused us of being either paying a debt or not really, not being lazy, not trying to work, everything. With everything
Yeah.
going on with Black Lives Matter, how are you feeling? How are you guys taking it over in Atlanta right
Oh, that is a tough question.
now? It's
because
a simple answer. No, no, simple
because
answer.
for me, and what people have to understand is that these experiences are very individual. So, or
Mm,
at least not experience, at least how we manage or work through the experience are very individual to one another. For me, I haven't really been posting, for instance, on my Sickle Cell Matters page, a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement. I posted one thing, but I try to be very careful because of the fact that sickle cell, like you said, this has been a fight that's very similar to the Black Lives Matter movement that we've all have had to fight since childhood.
childhood, yeah.
So I don't want to bombard people now a cause that's very similar to something we're already fighting because I don't want it to become overwhelming. And it has become overwhelming to me at times. And that's something that we have to protect, again, going back to rest. And
Mm,
because, as you know, that triggers crises, being too stressed, being too overwhelmed, being too angry. And
yeah.
I felt all of these things, disparity, anger, frustration, stress. And I try to make sure that I don't just jump out and then put another fight on top of the one that we already fight as a sickle cell community. And again, it's very similar. Black men and women, but Black men at a higher rate get discriminated against when they go to the hospitals. They're told that they're not in pain and that they don't need certain things. So this is something that they already are fighting just to stay alive,
Yeah.
just to get proper health care. So the Black Lives Matter movement and the Sickle Cell Matter movement is very similar. So I try not to overwhelm myself and my community because it's a fight that we're already fighting, we're already in. So, and even with the Black community, because sickle cell isn't that well known, even within our own community, sometimes it's hard to get people to understand why, when I went to the hospital, they kicked me out before, or why they didn't want to give me medication. I've had family members that until they saw it, they didn't understand, well, why, when you went there, didn't they just give you medical care? Well, because there's a stigma in the sickle cell community that depending on what you look like or depending on,
Mm.
how you come in and act, they may not help you. So it's a tough situation because we get it from so many ends, and I don't want to overwhelm myself and then my community with now a similar fight on top of the one that we already are fighting.
Wow, that's a priceless answer. You don't understand because I also saw it on social media and I saw a lot of people putting the black posts. And for myself, I was trying to get involved and I thought they will never understand if I try to preach to them that we go through this every day. I
Yeah.
remember when I had my daughter in 2017, I was in hospital and I was in the ward and my blood count was so low. And the lady just marched into the room. This was at 8 p.m. at night. and said I need to leave that room. And my mom was like, she's very poorly. We don't even know if she's going to make it to tomorrow. She's
Right.
in this room for a reason, so at least she's next to her family. But the lady
Hmm.
was so determined that I had to leave this room. And my mom was like, she has sickle cell. She's now has all these symptoms. Her blood count is the lowest it's ever been. And
Yeah.
why do you want to put this girl on this amount of stress
Yeah.
at 8 p.m.? Who is this patient that needs this room? My mom just couldn't figure out why is this woman so
Terrible.
rude to me. And she could not believe that, oh, all I'm worried about is my sickle cell was what was going through her mind.
Right.
And we had to fight that evening. We fought for almost 1.5
Oh my,
hour arguing. I had to prove I was so weak. And the
hmm.
next day I had the baby, and the lady, I never forget. She did, because she just chose. She really chose not to understand what sickle cell was. Even
Hmm.
though she was a, you know, doctor or nurse, I can't even
Yeah.
remember. She just
Yeah.
got to understand the impact of sickle cell and pregnancy.
Yeah.
Just all she wanted was that girl needed to get out of that room at all costs. So
Wow.
we're always fighting a battle, and people don't realize this, and they think that is because we don't show a sign on the outside we're strong. We're not that strong. It's just that we
Yeah.
don't have a choice but to keep fighting.
It's actually a survival mechanism. If we cried or yelled or screamed every time we felt something or we got discriminated against, we would be sick. It would make us sick.
Yeah.
And the survival mechanism.
Yeah. What about the COVID-19? Were you able to manage it at home by yourself, and were you able to give advice on your website and Sickle Cell Matters? Did they help reach out to people with sickle cell to see how we're doing and see how the community was surviving that? How did you guys manage it out in Atlanta?
Yeah, so I was there's a lot of other communities that sickle cell communities that are hosting meetings and discussions, and so I made sure to share like the sickle cell consortium. There's a sickle cell community in Australia.
Yes.
Uh, so I made sure to share the people that were actually doing discussions. But then on the other end, there was a story. Of a guy named Omar Beach, I think his name is. They actually shot a documentary that is amazing, and I feel like everybody should watch. It's called Spill Milk. If there's a way you can tag the link when we're done, but it's a really amazing documentary about two friends, one that has sickle cell and one that is just his friend that started to understand the journey of this guy with sickle cell. What I'm leading to is he lived in Atlanta, and during coronavirus, um, this is what I heard from a friend. He did not go to the hospital because he was worried. He was worried about potentially contracting corona, and his blood dropped, like when your blood dropped when you were pregnant, and he died.
Mm.
Um, I don't know for a fact, but his friend said that it may have been because he waited too long because he was worried about going to the hospital and contracting corona. So, he tried to wait it out and didn't. So, uh, you know, peace and blessings to his family. I pray for his family and his friends, but, very sad story of us needing to go to the hospital. And I'm sure there's so many other people that didn't go because of coronavirus, being worried about, what they what would happen. Luckily, I didn't get sick where I needed to go to the hospital, but it's definitely a scary thought to think,
Yeah.
you know, these places are places that the sickle cell community frequent. A lot of us are in the hospital month after month after month. So the coronavirus just now added a layer of, concern and fear throughout the community, and even, death for some people. So it was definitely a serious thing for the sickle cell community.
Wow. Um, as we come to a close, what would be your final message and your message of hope to people as you know, as president of the Sickle Cell Matters? What would be your message of hope to people out there living with sickle cell?
Definitely educate yourself, educate your children, educate yourself on your disease. And I don't just mean, uh, you know, I mean everything from what type of blood do you carry? Are you SS, SC, sickle beta thal? Um, Keep a journal, journal your experiences, if the doctor tells you something and you don't know that word, write it down, educate yourself because we can empower ourselves with education, educating ourselves on our disease. But more so, I'd like to reach out to people that don't have sickle cell because we kind of touched on the topic of it would be great if other people jumped into this fight with us. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. We're trying to get everyone around us to see that we're yelling for help, that we need assistance. We're the ones that are physically fighting with it every day. And you see it in other movements where I've supported cancer. I've worn pink and I don't have cancer. I don't have anybody close to me that has it, but I've supported that movement. And with that, we can then start to get research. We can start to get donations. People don't normally donate to things they don't know about.
Yeah.
So we can get donations. We can educate doctors and hospitals more, but it takes not just us. Like, I think a lot of us want the fight to also spread to other people.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And your message is absolutely clear, especially from a person who has sickle cell and has started this organization. You see so many people and you understand the critical issue we go through every day. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us again.